I want to join my colleagues in thanking both of you for your extraordinary service to our nation. Director Clapper, you made the point in response to Senator Reid and also in your testimony that the international community is, in your words, well-postured to detect any violation by Iran of the nuclear agreement. Has there been any indication so far that it is moving toward a violation?
No, not yet. No, we have no evidence thus far that they're moving towards violation.
And I'm sure you would agree that this nation and the international community need to be vigilant and vigorous in enforcing this agreement.
Absolutely, sir. As I said earlier, I think we in the U.S. intelligence community are in the distrust and verify mode.
And the distrust and verify mode includes not only the IAEA, but also other investigative tools that you have at your disposal.
Absolutely.
Going to the ballistic missile issue, which I believe is profoundly important, and General Stewart makes this point in his testimony as well. I urge the President to impose sanctions and enforce them as a result of Iran's continued development of ballistic missiles, which are a threat not only to the region but also to our allies in Europe. And fortunately, he has heeded those calls from myself and letters that were joined by my colleagues. How important do you think it is that we continue to enforce sanctions in response to Iran's development of ballistic missiles?
Well, I think it's quite important that sanctions be enforced, not only for missiles, but for terrorism or any other things that are covered under sanctions. The Iranians have a very formidable missile capability, which they continue to work on. They've fired some 140 or so missiles since the original UNSC resolution 1929 of 2010, and about half of those firings were going on during the negotiations, which, of course, were, as you know, were separate from the actual negotiations. So for our part, this is a challenge that we must attend to by being as vigilant as possible on gleaning intelligence about these capabilities and reporting that to our policymakers.
And speaking for myself, and I believe my view is joined by other colleagues, I will continue to insist on vigorous enforcement of those sanctions because of the threat that you have very powerfully outlined. General Stewart, in your testimony, you make the point that the economic relief that Iran will see as a result of the JCPOA is unlikely in the short term to increase its military capability. Is that correct?
I think it is unlikely immediately because I believe that the focus will be on internal economic gains. However, after 35 years of sanction, Iran has developed, as we just discussed, the most capable missile force in the region. It's extended its lethality, its accuracy. It's got all the ranges covered. It can reach all of its regional targets. In the long term, I fully expect that they'll invest some of the money into improving the rest of their military capabilities.
What is the long term? In other words, how many years is long term?
Yeah.
Are we talking 5 years, 10 years? And secondly, what should be our response? And I believe it has to be a robust and strong response to that increase in longer-term military capabilities that threatens our allies and friends in the region, most particularly Israel, with terrorism and other conventional military capabilities, as well as the kinds of counter incentives we can provide.
So the long term might not be even as far as 5 years. We've already seen an agreement between Iran and the Russians for the S-300 air defense system. We're seeing Russia demonstrate tremendous capabilities as they've done their out-of-area deployment into Syria. So there's lots of weapons technology being displayed, and I suspect within the next 2 to 5 years, we can expect Iran to invest in some of those weapons technology that's being displayed in the Syrian battlefield by the Russians today.
And what should be our response?
I think I'm going to punt that to the policymakers on the response to how Iran arms and how they might use this weapons capability.
You would agree that we should respond robustly and strongly?
I would agree that we should have a policy to be prepared to respond appropriately.
Thank you. Thank you, General. Thank you, Director Clapper.